What's up, Starcraft fans? In patch 4.9.2, Blizzard released new enemy unit compositions for the co-op missions. This means that my enemy unit compositions video is now out of date and needs a refresh. So I spent the weekend painstakingly building this new summary of enemy unit compositions. Yeah, I'll have the entire image linked down below, but in this video I will go over the unit compositions, what to watch out for, and what commanders can do against them. Special thanks to Kaito Hacks for extracting the new unit icons that I used for this image. First, let's discuss the note icons that I used for this list. The red exclamation means that the wave hits hard for its tier level. Full disclosure, this is completely arbitrary on my part, and I assigned them based on how I feel the wave compares to others of the same tier. Let me know if I should add it to or remove it from some of the tiers. Make your case and I'll consider. The blue lightning indicates that the wave can use psionic storms, which are dangerous for tight clumps of air and ground units. The green cloud indicates disabling cloud, which, disables units caused it from attacking. I believe this includes heroes. Next up we have Cloak, which means you need to bring detection. Then we have Burrow, which also means you need to bring detection. Then we'll have the Seeker Missile, which again is dangerous for tight groups of air and or ground units. Finally, I have a Stargate, a Spire, and the Starport, which all indicate that the wave has air units. Now that's over with, let's see the enemy unit compositions. The new Skytoss enemy unit composition is called Protoss Armada Classic. These fleets were found glassing entire planets prior to the First Great War. Key units are Scout, Corsair, Carrier, and Arbiter on the harder difficulties. When you first encounter the enemy, you will get a notification on the lower right of your screen indicating what enemy unit composition will attack. This will allow you to tell the wave much earlier, and all you need to remember are the goofy names that they have. For Skytoss Classic, you'll want to build your anti-air. This comp can be relatively problematic for the likes of Warzone and Kerrigan early on, since their anti-air splash don't really ramp up until later in the game. You will encounter cloaked units, but these are tier 6 and 7, which means you will not encounter them until the late game. Next up, we have Protoss Legion Masters and Machines, the old gateway composition. This noble and versatile force is able to quickly respond to the threats to their society. The key units are Immortal, Colossus, and High Templar on the harder difficulties. This is a purely ground force that speedrunners love because they don't have to invest into additional anti-air. If you have armored units like siege tanks or immortals, you might want to watch out for the, immortals, since they deal lots of damage versus armored. When you run bio or air, watch out for the psionic storms. They don't stack, but Amon is a really good spellcaster, and even if you retreat or split, he'll just storm the split off halves. It's usually better to just snipe off the High Templar before they get their storms off. Next, we have Protoss Legion Towering Walkers, or the Robo Colossus comp. Modern Protoss ground force culminating in the Colossus, a robotic walker designed to incinerate large numbers of weaker targets. The key units are Immortal and of course Colossus. There is a sprinkling of air units here. If you're a commander who naturally gets anti-air like Raynor, Dehaka, etc., you only need to watch out for the Colossus later on. Commanders like Vorazun and Zagara might want to invest in slightly more anti-air, but this is something you'll usually want to have either way. If you're Dehaka, by the way, make sure to devour the Sentry. It's in a lot of the tiers, make sure to devour the Sentry whenever it is available, because the resulting magic fart will really soften up the wave for your Stompy thing, your Fire thing, or your army. Another Robocomp is the Protoss Legion Disruptive Artillery, which is the Reaver Disruptor composition. Modern Protoss ground force culminating in the Disruptor and the Reaver. Artillery capable of firing balls of death at unsuspecting enemy ground troops. Well, even at suspecting enemy ground troops will feel the pain. Key units are Immortal, Reaver, and Disruptor on the harder difficulties. If you look at the last 3 tiers of this unit comp, you'll see that they all have both Reavers and Disruptors, so that's tons of splash damage. You'll want to watch out if you're Raynor, Kerrigan, and Phoenix. Commanders like Tychus will have options such as Cannonball Stun Attack. Abathur and Dehaka will be able to leverage Guardians and or Swarm Hosts against these enemies. If you're Nova, you'll want to use your Liberators and Siege Tank Spider Mines to take them out before they can take you out. Moving on to Skytoss waves, we first have the Protoss Armada, Hope of the Kalai, which is Skytoss Carrier. Modern Protoss air fleet culminating in the Carrier, a magnificent capital ship known to inspire hope in the hearts of the Templar. Key units are Oracle, Void Ray, and Carrier. If you've played this composition on Oblivion Express, you'll definitely remember how much damage Oracles do. Watch out if you have a light army such as Rainer's Infantry. All commanders should definitely go for more anti-air. Carax can go for solo lance early and mind control late. Enforcers would be a good option for Zertul. Devourers are an amazing option for Abathur. Vorzun might have to go for double Stargate before the second gateway if you get this enemy. If you're Dehaka, devour the Oracles. They will produce the magic farts and save Glevig and Marvar for big waves. The other Skytoss enemy is called the Siege of Storms, and Storm is just another term for Tempest. Modern Protoss air fleet culminating in the Tempest, a glorious capital ship known for its unmatched range throughout the Kaprulu sector. Lavson's Tukov siege tank. His 18 range siege tanks! Key units are Oracle, Void Ray, and Tempest. Same deal as the Carrier version, get more anti-air. A little more annoying thing is that the Phoenixes sometimes fly past your defenses and camp your mineral line or overlords. Either way, it's worth focusing them down if they arrive before the Tempests, regardless of the commander. Speaking of which, Tempests don't have interceptors to distract your army, but they do hit harder. So it's a good idea to focus fire them down anyway. Getting anti-air is paramount when fighting this enemy unit composition. Last for Protoss, we have Shadow Disruption, which is the Dark Templar composition. Though also adept at brute force, many Protoss troops, including the ones found in this legion, prefer a more tactical approach. Key units are Phoenix, Dark Templar, and Disruptor, both on harder difficulties. This is amazing for Dehaka since both Sentries and Dark Templar can be devoured for the magic fart. Note the Phoenix on tier 5, this can throw you off on Chain of Ascension, since the second wave, which arrives at 7 minutes, contains Phoenixes. It could trick you into thinking that this is Tempests. Don't fall for it. Get detection, normal anti-air, and carry on smashing Amon's face. As far as I know, only Stukov and Vorzun don't love this composition, since their detection is relatively easy to pick off. The rest can handle it just fine. Now on to the Terran compositions. We'll start with the two bio compositions. First is Terran Battalion, Classic Infantry. It's the new enemy composition. These squads of infantry-based battalions were pioneered by the UED during the First Great War. Key units are Marine, Medic, Siege Tank, and Ghost on the harder difficulties. This one calls for splash options, Ascendants, Ultralisks, Banelings, Siege Tanks, and Reavers, and of course the hero abilities are superb options against this enemy force. Dehaka on the later wave should always have Devourer targets in the Ghost and the Science Vessel. Watch out for Stim if you're running without Splash. If you react slowly without your abilities, they could burst down your hero units like Tychus' Outlaws. Always remember to put a conservative field up as Phoenix and research Fire Lance as Carax. And then we have the Terran Combined Forces Raiding Party, which is the old biocomp. Though not the most organized, this ragtag force is a well-rounded army designed to keep enemies on their toes. Key units are Siege Tank, Science Vessel, Battlecruiser, and the Ghost on the harder difficulties. You'll notice that they come with a medic on the very first wave, whereas the classic bio does not. They also bring out Battlecruisers much later on in the game, so you'll want to start building your anti-air by then. Same commanders who are good versus classic bio will also be good versus the old bio. Something else to note, this is probably Zagara's favorite enemy unit composition to fight. She is sensational versus this enemy legion because her Balings will never run out of targets until you win the game. By the way, apologies, I should have had the starport icon here. I simply overlooked it. I will have this in the final version, don't you worry. Following bio, we have the two mech options. First one, we have the Terran Battalion Classic Mech. Some have called this classic Terran mechanical force from the First Great War the most efficient fighting outfit in the Caprula sector. Key units are Goliath, Siege Tank, Science Vessel, and Battlecruiser. Something they didn't actually mention here is how even the Vultures on the very first wave do tremendous damage if you let them deploy their spider mines. This is why I've put the hard hitting tag on them, because they do a lot for a first wave comp. If you run Vorzun or Karax, you can mind control the battlecruisers at tier 5, the 7-minute wave on Chain of Ascension. Alternatively, you can mind control the Vultures and start deploying your own minefields. This could actually be helpful in some mutations as a mineral dump. The other mech composition is Terran Ground Forces Machines of War, or the Old Mech. This fully mechanized force features the strongest armored vehicles the Terran war machine has to offer. Key units are Siege Tank, Thor, and Science Vessel. Another note on this one is that the enemy randoms between Goliath and Warhound. For both mech comps, you'll want a lot of anti-armor. Marauders, Immortals, Siege Tanks, Cannonball, Abrogators, Liberators, Stormhosts, and Horner's Hellions are all good options against them. If you can, try to target down the Siege Tanks before they siege up. The reason this has the hard hitting tag is because the Siege Tanks combined with the anti-air of Goliaths and or Warhounds does pose a threat. Moving on to the air compositions, we'll first have Terran Combined Forces Shadow Tech or Reaper Liberator. Striking from the shadows, this highly specialized Terran force is sure to strike fear into any enemy commander. Key units are Reaper, Liberator, Raven, and Battlecruiser. Whenever I do my mutation videos, there are 3 enemy unit compositions where I instantly redo for the harder ones. This is the first one. Reapers hit extremely hard versus buildings and small ground units. This is why I have them as hard hitting for a tier 1. Cyclones are annoying, Liberators are annoying, Ravens are annoying. On top of that, they will drop nukes. And this is the only enemy comp that I designated with hard hitting on 6 of its tiers. Stukov's Infested Spam, Swarm Hosts, Wrathwalkers, Han and Horner's Reapers, Zerathul's Robo units, Ascendants, and Rerolling should be pretty decent options against this enemy unit composition. Last for Terran, we of course have the Terran Squadron Dominion Battle Group, aka Sky Terran. This battle group is representative of those that would often enforce the will of the Dominion on outskirt Terran worlds. Key units are Viking, Banshee, Liberator, and Battlecruiser. Another note here is this unit composition sometimes interchanges the Viking and the Banshee. Sometimes only Vikings, sometimes only Banshees, and sometimes they interchange the Banshees and the Liberators. So yeah, there are 3 enemy compositions where I instantly redo on the harder mutations. This is the second one. The fact that Banshees hit so early on is troublesome for Artanis, Vorzun, Karax, Dehaka, and Stetman. Notice how on 3 separate tiers, this has 4 icon notes, meaning that there's a lot of stuff that you have to watch out for. There is only one other enemy unit comp with 4 icons in a single tier, and that is Baneling Scourge. Your best options for this is good old Bio, Goliaths, Scourge, Corsairs, Devourers, Enforcers, and of course, Rerolling. Now onto the Zerg enemy compositions. We start with a new one called Zerg Winged Brood Classic. Culminating in a Guardian and Devourer, this force features fully evolved Zerg flyers commonly found during the First Great War. Key units are Scourge, Brood Queen, Guardian, and Devourer. Full disclosure, I have not actually seen much of this composition yet. I want to tag the Guardian and Devourer waves as hard hitting, but I haven't seen them in action yet. If you have played against them and think they should be hard hitting compared to the rest of the enemies in the same tier, please let me know. Bio, Goliaths, Swarm Hosts, Liberators, Tychus, Ascendants, and Enforcers should all be great options, provided you can get enough of them. Next up, we have another new unit composition with Zerg Nidus Brood Classic. These Zerg ground forces are reminiscent of the ones found invading Terran and Protoss homeworlds during the First Great War. Key units are Hydralisk, Brood Queen, Ultralisk, and Lurker on the harder difficulties. Watch out for the queens to spawn broodlings since they can one-shot tanks and stuff. Also, get detection early on as you'll need it against the lurkers. Spider Mines, Siege Tanks, Dark Templar, High Templar, Infestors, Guardians, Colossus, Abrogators, and Nux should be decent at these enemies. You may want stuff like Immortals, Ascendants, Liberators, Crooked Sam, or Dude Lords versus the Ultralisks later on. Moving on, we have Zerg Nidus Brood, Ravaging Infestation. Augmented by evolutions developed between the First and Second Great Wars, these broods act as the swarm's frontline forces when conquering new worlds. Key units are Ravager, Hydralisk, Infestor, and Ultralisk. This is a pure ground force and is one of my favorites to fight against because so many commanders have anti-ground splash. Spider Mines, Siege Tanks, Torasks, Lurkers, Reavers, Banelings, Dark Templar, Colossus, Ascendants, Disruptors, Tychus, and Abrogators should all be superb options against ground Zerg. Watch out for the Lurkers in the mid tier, and you should do fine. After ground, we have air, or Zerg Winged Brood, Brooding Corruption, as Blizzard likes to call it. This primary flyer-focused brood excels at sieging enemy encampments with broodlords developed during the Second Great War. Key units are Zergling, Utalisk, Corruptor, and Broodlord. A funny thing about this composition is that the later waves don't really hit as hard as the other enemy unit compositions. Of course, that is pre-metabolic boost for the Zerglings. I have actually hero soloed this as Kerrigan by just using Omega Worms just to tank the damage until the game ended. Ripwave Vikings, High Templar, Scourge, Corsairs, Devourers, Ascendants, Ghosts, Scouts, Liberators, Devour, Nux, Enforcers, and Corruptors are superb options to deal with them. And last, but certainly the most cancerous of all, we have Zerg Combined Brood Explosive Threats. Beware, this force features a swarm of the most volatile and irritating of Zerg specimens. Key units are Baneling, Scourge, Viper, and Swarmhost on the harder difficulties. There are 3 enemy unit compositions where I instantly redo on the harder mutations. This is the 3rd one. This is also the only other composition with 4 icon tiers on the 6th and 7th wave. Aberrations by themselves aren't enough to be considered a hard-hitting wave, but combine them with Scourge and Vipers and/or Swarm Hosts, and it will be extremely hazardous for your forces. It's actually funny that this is called explosive threats because the actual threats are the non-exploding units like the Vipers and Swarm Hosts. Disabling Cloud prevents heroes from attacking, and Swarm Hosts are often left behind after clearing the rest of the wave, and you don't realize that they're there until you lose a building. And yeah, I believe that's it for the new enemy unit compositions. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you think I misplaced one of the hard-hitting tiers or have any other suggestion for this, if you want to add an icon, for example, Irradiate or something, let me know. And yeah, I'll try to get to them. See you.